I'd like to call the meeting to order. Welcome to the January 4th, 2023 meeting of the Goffstown Economic Development Council. If you can stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I think we'll start with a roll call, starting with Joanne.
Joanne Duffy, Planning and Economic Development Director.
Sarah Smith-Chupakis, member.
Jim Craig, Select Board Rep.
Chris Barrett, alternate member.
John Napoli, Vice Chair.
Chet Bowen, Chair.
Charlie Birchmeyer, member.
Dick Bruno, member.
Great. Okay, did everyone have a chance to look through the minutes of December 7th? Great.
Oh, I didn't copy the minutes, but I did send them to you.
But we got them in email?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Any motion on that?
I'll make a motion
I
to
second
accept.
that. I'll second the motion to accept the minutes.
Okay, so motion and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Abstain.
And abstain. So, one
John's
abstention.
abstaining.
Okay, so Joanne, I think we want to talk about the Hawks and Peddlers license a little bit. Can you provide a couple of details and then we can have a discussion?
Sure. So I made copies of a few different things for you. There's two RSAs that cover hawkers and peddlers, state RSAs. And then there's a copy of the hawkers and peddlers application from the state that they currently use. And then we also have our application for Goffstown and the actual hawkers and peddlers ordinance for Goffstown. So if you remember, those of you who were here last time, Jim Courier from the Mountain Base Brewery had asked about having a food truck basically set up when he had special events, that it would make it easier for people since he doesn't serve food. And the problem is that the state has their set of regulations, and then the town has additional regulations on top of that. And from what Jim said, and I've heard it from others, that there's a problem with these vendors trying to do it for, you know, one type of event, come in, get out quickly type thing, because our regulations require a criminal check, which I don't really know how long that takes, but that goes through the state, and they seem to not want to have to be burdened with that. And it also requires $1 million insurance policy for their business, which I'm not sure if all of these vendors carry that much insurance. I mean, it might be typical, but I don't know for a fact. I have to speak with an insurance agent. So the state requires a $5,000 surety, and they also ask on their application personal questions such as, where am I here? Color of hair, color of eyes, which leads me to believe they probably do a criminal check, but it's just part of the application process. Their application costs $50. The town's is $100 for the season if you have a push cart, and $200 for the season if you drive a food truck. However, there is an exception for having someone there for the day, which I think it's about $25. So the hang-up is not the $25, it's the other requirements on top of what they've already provided to the state. So we were thinking of talking with the police chief to see what he thinks about maybe making some minor changes to the ordinance, but ultimately it needs to be approved by the select board.
Just clarification, do they have to get the state license as well as
They
the
do.
town license?
And they have to
So you've
get
gotta
a
do-
health license from the state as well, in addition to this.
Wow.
I mean, that's just because, you know, that
Yeah.
you have to have that health license to serve food.
About 10 years ago, I got a hawkers and peddlers license to the state of New Hampshire, and I was doing something in Hampton. And it did require a criminal background check.
It did.
Yeah, it did.
It
I
doesn't
remember
say
that.
anything on the paperwork if
Yeah,
if they
I
have
know
to
it-
pay an additional fee for that, but,
I don't remember that portion
Mm-hmm.
of it, but I do remember, you had to have a clean record,
yeah,
yeah.
well, it makes
Which I think
sense.
would, yeah, it does make
Yeah.
sense.
So if that's the case, then are we requiring it again for no reason? So I think it needs to have some better coordination with what the state is requiring.
Yeah, I'm hoping that, and anyone else who wants to join can, that we can meet with the chief and have that discussion and ask those questions. Of course, the first criminal check has to be done. Can we do, like yearly, you can just basically attest to the fact that there has been no additional criminal charges, like that kind of thing, to save some funds, and then
It's also time, just to let you know, because the
Yep.
criminal background check through the state of New Hampshire during COVID was taking 60 to 90 days. So it was very far behind, and then before COVID, it was probably 7 to 14 days if you were really, really lucky and checked on it every day. I only know because I had employees that had to go through a criminal background check, and a lot of times that was the delay in actually hiring someone, was getting that background check back. So it's thorough.
So, I guess my question, so looking at reasons for denial, which presumably would be, reasons why you're doing this in the first place, I'm not seeing a whole lot that wouldn't be accomplished by the state. So false information provided by the applicant. Okay. Determine whether to grant the license, town should consider information provided.
What are you reading from?
So I'm looking at the
Page
Goffstown Hawkers and, I'm sorry, the Goffstown Hawkers and Peddlers Ordinance.
Okay, okay.
And then on the second page, item C is reasons for denial of the application. And it talks about make it clear that all provisions of state law and this ordinance will be complied with. And then, it talks about item 3, conviction for violation of the law. I don't know how much else is being gleaned from this that would be captured on the state.
Right, that's true. The things that we were told that the departments were looking at was things like the location, making sure that it's on private property, not town property, those sorts of things. So we weren't looking at something that the state would be concerned with. However, I think our ordinance is much more restrictive than the state's.
can you walk us through what specifically we have in ours that makes it more restrictive? Because that's all we really have control over, or not even control, potential influence over.
Right, so, like I said, the certificate of
Yeah,
insurance.
1 million, right?
1 million. Let's see. Well, there's restrictions about, they have to provide their hours of operation. I mean, they can't obviously do it after a certain hour, or too early in the morning. Some of them apply for traveling through the town, like say if it was an ice cream truck, versus, somebody that's stationary. I've even seen food trucks that find a place that they seem to do well, and then they're actually build around it and like make themselves a permanent
Yeah,
site
yeah,
in some
yeah.
places. Let's see. The fees, so it's the fee is 100 and 200 in addition to the 50 that they paid to the state. And that's on an annual, it's seasonal.
Right.
So it's on an annual seasonal basis.
And then the surety bond that the state requires, it says that it's a $5,000 deposited with the Secretary of State in cash or a surety bond. So it's much smaller.
Yes, it would be much less expensive. So here's the temporary. The fee of $20 is actually per week, not per day, not to exceed 12 weeks. So no one has ever applied for that one. What was the other thing I said upstairs? The $1 million, the criminal check.
Yep.
Yeah, just the long term.
Right.
Applying for
Right.
it and then waiting for it to come back. You might miss your.
Right, so I think how these things work is, one of the businesses may think, oh, I'm gonna have this event, next Friday. And, okay, let's start advertising for it, and then they call a food truck and they're like, well, I have to get a criminal check, and it has to go through the town process and get signed by the police chief, it's more of just the red tape, I think.
So that's the biggest barrier, is
Taking
the
it
criminal
longer.
check, but.
It seems like just because of the length of time, the criminal check, I'm not sure about the $1 million policy. Like I
would
said
love to know
before,
what
I
that is.
don't know
Yeah.
if that's unusual or not for somebody with a food truck.
I think it's also worth mentioning, you're looking at $200 for one town versus $50 for the full state. I think
Right.
that could scare away.
Right.
If somebody's going to come in for, a short event, and they're going to pay $200, that might be the entire profit
Right.
for the day.
If they were to do it just for the day or the week, then it would be
Right.
$20. But then there's that limitation of doing it 12 weeks. So if you pay for the $20 for a week, then you only have the 11 weeks left.
Okay.
This-
So, go ahead.
This town hasn't had, I think we've had 2, 3, maybe tops. But some towns, more so at the seacoast, they have lots of food trucks out there, and they also have a food truck event. It stopped during COVID, but I'm sure it will come back. One of the towns, I don't remember where it is, but they have a whole congregation of food trucks for this special event that they do. But here, in this area, when we first approached the select board about this, the restaurant owners were not happy. So you have that dilemma as well. It's kind of bringing in competition. And I remember one year we had, I don't remember which event it was, it may have been Old Home Day, where whoever was organizing it at the time brought food trucks in and parked them towards the back end over here. And the restaurants in the village were not happy about that.
Sure, understandable.
But it would seem to me, if somebody's gonna be in the food truck business, this is not gonna, all of a sudden, they're not gonna decide, oh, Goffstown, we're gonna go, to the brewery
Right.
because they got an event. So they've already applied through the state. They already
They have
that
their
vendor's
license, yeah.
Yeah,
So-
they usually have like a spot that they go. I have a friend who owns a food truck, and he goes to a place called the Vault in Merrimack, and that's where he sets up, and he has a bond, and does everything that he needs to do through the town of Merrimack. He also lives there, so.
And does the Vault sell their own food?
No, I don't
No.
believe so.
Okay.
I haven't actually been there. I don't really know the whole scenario. I just have talked to him about it because more curiosity than anything.
It's usually, they park it somewhere where they don't
Right.
have food. Is anyone familiar with the apartments on, so you go on Chestnut Street, you're heading towards South Willow, and then I think it's called Willow Street, and on the right-hand side, it looks like an old factory building,
Yeah.
but it's actually those micro apartments. They have food trucks stationed there on certain nights for the people who live there. It's like a young crowd, and then they just come down, get their food, go back up to their apartment. So it's becoming more and more popular.
Yep. So I want to, two things. The criminal checks now, in my company, we hire people all the time. It's much quicker than it certainly was during COVID. And if we ask someone, but there's another point to it that I want to get back to something the vice chair said that made a lot of sense. But right now, if you were to go up to Concord, you could stand in line. It's probably not pleasant or fun, but you can stand in line and get your criminal check done as easily as you could before COVID. And while it costs more, you can also do it online. But so maybe we can talk to the chief about this and then bring it to the select board and public hearing and all of that. But John makes a good point. If we're able to cross-reference the state check that's already been done, I don't see anything on reasons for
Right.
denial that we wouldn't be able to see there. So I think maybe we can talk to the chief about
Yeah.
that, start that conversation.
Maybe the chief I don't know if this is how it would ever work, but possibly the state could send the criminal check to the chief, and then we would have a copy of it. It didn't sound like each year they had to provide a new criminal
Right.
check, but I don't know for sure.
Well, I think that's a conversation we can have.
Yeah,
But it seems like a really unfortunate reason for someone to not.
Yeah, very redundant. I mean, you're just making
it's
them go
red
through
tape
that.
and
Yeah.
money.
Yeah, well, money too.
I agree with proof of insurance. We don't,
Yeah.
as a
Oh,
town,
yeah.
want to be liable for something that all makes sense to me, but the criminal check might be the one thing, especially because it was mentioned as a reason. That could be something we could look at. Sorry, go ahead. I thought you were gonna say
Agreed.
something.
No, and I was gonna say the location as well is something that the town should be concerned about.
Right.
Wherever
You don't
they're
want to
at.
block, you don't want to have it
Sure.
blocking, whatever, or be too close to the corner.
But
or-
that could-
Right, and there's no reason we couldn't add language to an ordinance about specifically not
Right.
blocking access to
Yeah.
a current restaurant, right?
Yeah, but I'm thinking more in the terms of, let's say, this one situation where you want to come on to a lot, and never been there before.
Yeah.
That would be in the purview of, I think, the police chief or the police department and say, yeah, we're good with that, you know? You've got everything else in place, but for this one night, yeah, you probably have to pay a fee if that's what we want to do, but it just seems like, for one night or one day or a few days,
Yeah.
that would be more of the process. So it wouldn't cause them so much problem. I can see if somebody's gonna be in a place for a period of time, parking on the corner, you
Yeah.
say, yeah, okay, yeah, we have to make sure that that's a good spot.
Yeah,
Well, just seems like a lot of red tape to do for one special
one
event.
Agreed. So I think what we'll do is I'll reach out to the chief and then I'll let you know when is good for the chief. And then if we can send out to everyone here, and if a couple of you want to join, just let us know.
Okay.
Maybe it would make sense to at least start that conversation. I don't know what more we can do
Yep.
in this platform. So, okay. Great, thank you. And adopting new EDC goals is next. So are we adopting new ones or sticking with the ones we have? What do we think?
I feel like we just talked about this.
We did.
Yeah. The current goal is focused on what we've been doing, right? The Pinardville area, the cooperative extension survey and all of that, which brings me to another question that could be afterwards, but what's the status of?
so I reached out to Scott. Scott and I met, I think it was the week after our last meeting. And we went over, the training portion and what he was going to do. And he said he was going to send out one of those survey monkeys to the people that were interested. I gave him the names. And I haven't heard anything. So I reached out to him again, I think it was yesterday. And he hasn't written back. So I don't know if he's on vacation or what the scoop is, but I'll keep trying.
Yeah, 'cause there were
said
some
he-
of them that went through, we went
Yeah,
to the training.
and
right?
he said he would have time in January to do it, so I have all the names of the people who said that they were interested. So this way, we really have to get this program moving. It's
Yeah.
taking forever to get out there and start talking to the business owners.
So, going forward, I think please someone correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that keeping the language that we're trying to locally deal with business engagement and retention is something that we should keep on there. Whether or not we use a partner to do that or try to do that on our own for now, I'm not sure, because we don't know the status of where we're at with the UAH co-op. But I think that's a pretty standard piece of what an EDC would do.
And the monies for that program have been encumbered for next year.
Okay, so we can keep that then for now. All right, I think
We should probably keep it though.
one makes sense. Just leave it as is. We've been talking a lot, or at least I have, about coordinating with other boards. I would like to add something about finding a path to coordination with other boards to responsibly influence policies to attract new business owners to Goffstown, something along those lines. We have an attorney here. Is that a good way to put it?
Say it again?
To respond, to coordinate with other boards and responsibly influence decisions or policies that would attract new business owners.
Yeah, that's what you want to do. That makes sense.
It is what we want to do, I think.
Yeah.
Anyone feel differently about that?
So,
As long as you can remember
Can we
the
start with a
language.
preposition? Well, luckily Joanne's writing it down right now, I think, and we'll have it in the minutes because Gail's
There's a
also.
video.
Yeah, so we're good.
do you want to say anything about the social media part of what we're doing to have that as a goal?
Yeah.
Because that seems like an effort that we're going to be working on for.
Yeah. I think develop it, because we're in the testing phase basically, so developing it and
Yeah.
helping it
Yeah.
find its footing, something like that. Right?
Yeah, I think, you know, enhancing communication and touch points with local businesses, and including exploration of, I don't know, of new media or mediums to do it. I'm just thinking out loud,
No, it's
obviously.
good. Outward processing is
But
okay here.
Yeah, I think something of just keeping it like simple with enhancing our, you know, our perpetual communication with local businesses
And,
through multiple outlets.
yes, that as well as getting feedback from local businesses.
I think it's something as simple as engaging local businesses via, multiple channels, including social media, email surveys, et cetera.
It is very simple. It's good. It's good to have those as the goals, the larger ones. Let's go with that. We need to vote on these, right? So do we need the exact language right now?
No, I think we've got the gist of it.
Okay. So that's
So
pretty.
you're voting to add to the existing EDC goals, or what are we doing?
Keeping one, we can talk about two. So one we agreed we're going to keep, and then we just added the other two just now, right?
Coordinating boards and then with social media,
So what do we think about two?
business engagement.
I think we're doing all that. We'll continue to do all that.
Right? So it doesn't complicate things to keep
Yeah,
that.
keep
It
it.
works out, right? Okay. If only there was someone from the industrial corporation we could talk to. Okay, so we're gonna have a total of 4 goals, but I think they're all sort of larger in scope and allow us the freedom to focus as we move along through the year with what's realistic.
And then the communication on the social media, it's gonna include trying to make it easier for people to coordinate opening a business.
Yes.
So that's just a part of that platform and communication.
Yep,
Just, we're doing a broader headline.
yep.
You want to work on the language and then next meeting, just
Is there a gen-
solidify it and.
Is there a general definition already of what this committee does? And does this
Yeah, there's a
conflict-
mission-
Does this conflict with that too? I doubt that it does, but we ought to check that just to make sure.
No, we do have it up, I have it, a copy of it upstairs. It was put together, I want to say the 60s.
Yep,
And it had a
Yeah.
lot to do with the industrial core back then. This committee's focus was more towards the industrial development. And it has not been updated. I mean, that was something the selectmen put together.
100 years ago.
so I don't think I don't think it's a
Maybe we need
conflicting
a
goal.
mission
I think
statement.
that's your question, right? Does it conflict? I don't think it conflicts.
Maybe a whole revamp. Well, because imagine posting the mission
Well-
statement on social media, it's talking about
Language from
industrial.
the 60s, yeah.
Yeah, we might wanna take a
Maybe
look
we,
at
maybe we
that.
can bring that into the next meeting, Joanne, and take a look. Yeah.
No, I guess what I was saying is there some definition of
Somebody-
what this committee is supposed to do? And are we going outside of that definition or authority that we have from the town? If, I'm not,
No, it makes
I think
sense.
economic development, it encompasses whether it's commercial,
no, I agree, but then,
industry.
I'm just saying if there is some existing language of what this committee
Oh, right.
is supposed to do, I just don't want to,
Mhm.
I doubt that that's the case, but it's just.
No, it's a good thought.
Something to
Yeah.
think about. I don't know, Joanne, if we're.
I can, if you want to just put this off another month, I can bring that to the next meeting. And
I mean, as far as updating the language and.
as far as
Of the
updating
goals
this
of-
to make sure that
Okay.
it's not in conflict with
Right.
the,
Yeah.
I think that makes sense.
And then we can read the mission
Yeah.
statement and see if it's
Yeah.
appropriate.
I have a feeling we've changed.
Yeah.
I think we've
you
developed.
were on here, weren't you,
That was,
a long time ago?
Do you
Yes, I think I actually read it in the last few days, just because I was looking at some things.
What, do you want to just come up and
Oh, sure.
say your name, and then we can,
My apologies.
no worries, come on.
Mike Lawler, I'm president of the Goffstown Industrial Corp. here, as a member of the general public as well. So I happened to look at it just recently, and I don't believe there is anything. I think the original 1960s was the Industrial Development Group, and then there was a change to that in the last probably 10 or 12 years or so, that made it a broader Economic Development Committee.
Okay.
But I don't think there's anything that you guys have talked about that's out of the scope. Makes sense to have exactly what that scope is for when you set the goals, but
So I think we'll take a look at that next month, and then we'll have the minutes that will remind us what we said about the goals that we set, which is good. Move on from there. But Mike, you're here, you were here for a different reason as a guest?
yes.
Okay. And are we okay to start with that?
Sure.
All right, let's go.
Oh, I'm just here to observe, I'm just,
Oh, I thought you wanted to talk to us about the Goffstown Industrial. Okay, you're just observing now.
that's it.
Well, thanks for observing. Appreciate it.
I want
Right.
to know more about what you do, jeez.
Feel free, floor is yours if you want it.
Sure.
Do you mind? That would be
Not at all.
great, because I'm not familiar, so.
So Goffstown Industrial Corp. is a 501c6,
Okay.
in essence, a nonprofit. Our goal is to increase the industrial and commercial tax base to Goffstown and the town surrounding it. We have funds that we have available. We've funded some of the other things, the original GIS on the town website, the EDSAT, the Economic Development Self-Assessment tool that you guys were involved in a few years ago. So we've provided funding for some of that. We've done assisted some landowners with hooking into grant money for brownfields development, and worked with Southern New Hampshire Planning as a stakeholder on some of the things that they've been involved in, everything from the broadband to the Exit 6A and some of the other initiatives.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So we can move on to, looks like old business at this point. If there's any questions from anyone else for Mike? No? Okay. So we're still working on St. A's, trying to get a meeting set with them.
Yeah, I think I'll follow up again because it's been a while since they've called me.
Okay. All right, and then UNH co-op training. I think we had people sign up for that already, right?
Yeah, that's what we just talked about. We're
Yep.
waiting to hear from Scott with the
Okay.
survey of who's available and when. He's going to offer a few dates.
Okay. And then I sent out the proposal for social media accounts. I know that this was also sent via email. Joanne, is this something that needs to be read into the record, or can we discuss it assuming people are, okay,
Yeah,
great.
you can.
So, if you take a look at that, if there's any edits you think that should be made to make it more clear, feel free to let me know. We can edit that in real time now and then send it to Derek as soon as we adopt it.
it seems to recap it. Well, where does it go from here, Jed? I mean, where do you,
So tomorrow, Joanne, right, will bring that to Derek, and then I think a final approval by the select board, am I correct on that?
No, Derek
Just
said
Derek?
he could approve it.
Great.
Oh, okay.
Nice.
And then he has to have IT set up the two sites.
So you would then be an administrator, we would then send anything we would like to you for approval, and you would post it, but we do not have it connected directly to the town site. That was a question that came up, and I remember that all of us felt that it should be separate, so it can be out there. It's we choosing Facebook
And Instagram.
and Instagram. So that's it. So it goes to Derek, and we can start at that point, which is
That's exciting.
yeah.
Yeah. And we can start posting lots of photos.
And people
of-
can email,
Yeah.
because that'll be more in tune with the times.
A little bit, right?
People will be like, oh, I'd like to have a business in Goffstown. Gosh, where would I go? Ooh, look at this.
Yep.
Yeah.
So we
Yeah.
start inviting all the other businesses to like the page and follow the page.
Yes,
Yeah.
and then like if you all could do the same once, obviously once it's set up, and then hopefully it will just spread from there.
Us like the page, you mean?
Yes.
Yes.
Personally. And then your friends and,
Yep.
see how many we can
Okay.
get. I had when I was doing the farmer's market in Hooksett, we had our own page that we set up, and I think I had a lot. I had maybe 2,000 people, because even today I get notification, so-and-so wants to join this page, and I'm like, it's like, it's still out there, but it's, there's nothing, obviously, there's no farmer's market, and people still want to join it. It's strange.
Sure.
I was just gonna say, with those being our initial platforms, like, do we have any plans on how, if even we're gonna add to those, like what that process is gonna look like? And I guess more so, do we have anything set in place to where when we're talking to businesses to find out, okay, what are they using right now? And I'm sure that for the most part, we're gonna hear Facebook, but as far as just kind of like, if we're gonna really look at social media trends or anything like that, kind of figuring out how we stay current with that, so that we're at the same rate as the, organizations that we're working with, I guess.
I agree with that. And is that something, Joanne, that we could work with Scott on? If we could get a better response rate from businesses in general, maybe questions about social media they prefer or that they use could help inform us what we should add. That's a very good point, Charlie. So maybe with Scott we can add that piece.
Yeah.
And then hope for a better response rate going
Yeah.
forward.
Okay.
Can we add to the, so presuming this goes to Derek and, all things go according to plan, can we have an agenda item? I think if everybody agrees that it'd probably be worthwhile for us to discuss initial posts and come next meeting with some ideas of things that we want to post, so we're all on the same page with some initial items for Joanne to put up.
Absolutely. I think it should be an agenda item, I think, every month, no matter what. Like what
That's a
we're,
good point.
right? So,
That's a good.
Yeah, we need to. I want more of these. I have one. It's
Oh, I have some.
You have some?
Yeah.
I would love some because.
you like those?
Man,
Those
it's
are
a
all right.
really good looking flyer.
May I ask who created it?
It was, I did, but
John.
the pictures were Jeremy.
Yeah,
Nothing
I
good.
gotcha.
It
Yeah, I
would
know
be well.
it's good. It's a good summary and it helps people get an idea.
Yep.
Especially if it's updated with our other platforms.
Mm-hmm.
Excitement.
That might be the first thing we share.
Yeah.
It might make sense to do that. Have that be our first thing we post. When
It's
we're up
already-
and running.
It's already made. It's already done. Go with it.
I say this with, I'm not trying to make any urgency out of it necessarily, but do you know a turnaround time for that, for IT? I mean, that's fairly simple to put that up, I think.
I think it would be.
Okay, good. Great.
I couldn't speak for them, but
So I think maybe it makes sense that once it's up, since you can approve it, we can just post that as a starting point, and we can all start liking it as soon as we see it.
Did I read in the minutes from from last month, something about, you know, whether a member of the EDC would monitor the platform and alert the, wasn't, did somebody else have to be involved in monitoring, or is it just
I
Joanne?
saw that, I wasn't even sure what
Is it-
they were referring to.
Well, on your recap here, it does reference that.
Right, so I wrote this in, I think in an email in about 4 or 5 minutes. And so that's why I wanted to make sure we all looked at it. This piece, I remember us talking about, we are not able to, Joanne, I think you said that we can't sort of shut off comments or things like that, so that.
I think they could do that, but then, you know, if somebody, you wouldn't want to shut everything off. I
Correct,
think
right.
if somebody started to get, you know,
You can hide comments.
Right.
Close down a link, do different things to make it so that, you know, if someone's getting loud and proud about something.
Yeah.
You know, and you can send them a message even and
Right.
explain that you're taking their comment down because
Mm-hmm.
it's controversial, but, you know, take it in a private platform or a
Right.
private conversation.
but since I've been posting, even though it's the towns, you know, I've never received anything like that. Everyone's been fine. Some people ask questions now and then, but not very often.
Okay.
So I guess my other question with this, so would we dedicate a member of the EDC, or is that meant in general that, you know, members of the EDC are monitoring?
That's a good question. We can change the language to members of the EDC, so it's not a member
Yeah.
alone responsible for it. I think that makes sense. Any other thoughts, edits on it? Okay, so Joanne, we need to vote with that edit that John just put in there. We vote on that? Okay. Motion to approve the proposal for social media accounts?
Motion.
Second?
Okay, motion by John, second by Dick. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed or abstained? Okay, motion passes. And Joanne, I see you brought a couple of other items. I don't see it here.
Oh,
but
there's one.
Is there a couple of things you wanted to go through before we
It was
adjourn?
just one handout that I had. I saw this today, I thought you would be interested. The population of New Hampshire grew by 7,700 people to wait, what am I doing here? Between July 2021 and July of 2022, the population of New Hampshire grew by 7,700 to a total of 1.3 million. So that's kind of a big jump just for 1 year. So they say here that it was New Hampshire's population gain was the second largest in New England, and they believe that that is from migration coming in. People are still dying here, and people are not having babies to replace those that have died, but it's all from people moving to our state, which is interesting because just a few years ago they were leaving. So it just goes to show you that once the pandemic hit and people wanted to get away from the cities, they came to New
COVID
England.
certainly sparked that. Can work
Remote work, so so much
Yeah.
easier.
And Rhode Island is losing people. And
Yeah.
Vermont had a large surge for 2020 to 2021. And then the following year, it just, boom, there was like no one again.
There you go. Nobody's in Vermont.
They bought up all the property in 2020. Nobody can go there.
And then they left.
Right.
I just thought that was interesting.
It is.
Yeah.
So that's,
One other question, old business wise, could, if,
Sure.
the ad hoc bridge committee, have we heard anything more?
no, so they still haven't met, I guess.
No.
I did ask Derek the time that you asked me about it, and he said they hadn't met. And then I saw it in the select board's minutes recently that they had not met.
But they're meeting in January, I think, at the last meeting, somebody said. I'm not sure of the date.
All right.
January?
Okay, let me check with him. And I can send you an email, because
Please.
you should be getting notified, but just in case.
All right, thank you.
Hopefully they're meeting after January 4th.
Yeah, right.
That would be great.
I don't think there's been any
It was
meetings
on
this
the-
week.
You missed it.
Okay, anything else?
I had one question going back to the hawkers and peddlers. Is there an instance, and I don't know the law on this, but where someone would be applying for a hawkers and peddlers license in Goffstown that's not required to have a state license?
No, they all are required.
So I'm wondering if, because it seems like an awful lot of the requirements are duplicative, it would seem like, you know, having a state license plus the COI and approval of location and whatever, and then it can be done in a matter of minutes rather than a matter of months.
Right.
Exactly.
Yep, agreed.
I think
Yep.
that's-
And
where
who
we'd
knows,
like to go
and
with
we'll
it.
bring that back, we meet with the chief, we may hear something different that, we're like,
Yeah.
oh, we didn't think of that, but
Yeah.
as of right now, it does seem that way, so maybe we can provide some help.
And
We've
at
had
the very
people-
least, oh, sorry.
Oh, no, go ahead.
I was just saying, at the very least, we would be more informative when folks bring up some of the, you know, issues that we can speak
Mhm.
to the rationale and help provide that.
We have had people come in asking about the license and taking the form and all of that, but then you don't hear from them, so I don't know what, you know, what made them change their minds, but.
Right, and that's what we would love to know,
Yeah.
what made them change their minds.
Do you have the vendors that actually got approved?
I do.
So maybe we could find out what the process was like for them, how they felt about the process too.
Yep.
That's a good idea, yeah.
You know, because they would have already, they'd probably be doing it elsewhere.
Mhm. Right. And I don't really think they're a threat to the restaurants because, like I said before, they're not sitting there all the time in that one location. They seem to come and go pretty regularly.
Yeah.
The only one that was there for a little while, there was one at the parts store on Mass Road in Pinardville. He used to come like
Yep.
every Friday or Thursday or something like that, and he would be there for the day, but he didn't even have a license, so, and no one stops him, like, they're just out there.
There's a hot dog guy down on Mass
I-
Road, he's been there for a long time.
The one over here, yeah.
The old mobile station.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah, he's always there. I've
And
had
he-
that.
he applied the first year, and
He
then
did?
he didn't after that, so.
Oh, that's interesting.
They're all in
hot
violation,
dogs,
the
by
ones
the
that
way.
are there.
Okay, next time I go, I'll tell him.
So then what's the-
By the way,
For a hot
Where's the
dog, I'll
issue?
share something.
I just wanted to let you know that.
Does it?
Can I wear, do you have a little badge that I can wear? I have a question, and it might not have anything to do with us, but it's just more of a socio-economic issue that came up recently with the situation with the homeless people in the woods on the other side of Pinardville. You know, where that baby was born and stuff. And I just was curious what does Goffstown stand on, like homelessness and people, that situation? Because I just decided to take a walk in the woods over by one of the parks in Goffstown, and there are some people living there.
Yeah, the police, that's the kind
So
of
I'm
the
just-
police jurisdiction.
Okay.
And we did have a discussion at one time with the chief about it. They're aware that people are there. They try to, you know, encourage them to move, but they also realize that we're right on the border with Manchester, who has a huge homeless population.
I was just curious. I mean, I know it's not necessarily our issue, but I think it could, like, for instance, we do have homeless people come to my restaurant and ask for food.
Do they?
Oh, absolutely. And we do have, we actually work with people in Manchester to supply food sometimes to the homeless when there's outreach programs. So, you know, we do different things. Not, you know, just because it's the right thing to do. But I don't know, that was such a sad event. And one of the things that came up is baby boxes where you can leave a baby. And I think there's one place in Manchester, but
I think it's the fire department.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's, Safe Harbor. I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah,
It's,
Safe Harbor.
It's a program.
yeah, no, I was just on my mind because I decided to take a walk and I was kind of
Yeah.
like, wow,
It's really bad out there.
yeah, it's terrible. It's terrible.
Okay. Anything else? So we have agenda set for next month, a few things to look at.
We
so-
have a couple of things, so, ideas for the social media. And then you wanted me to bring the mission statement to the next meeting, and then we'll have the minutes to finalize this language under the goals. I was going to try to find 2 more people to come in.
Be great, businesses.
Yes.
Should always try to do that if we can.
There's a flower shop on Mast Road that just opened, and when I had gone
Yeah.
to talk to them about just different things, they expressed quite an interest in
Oh,
learning
good.
more about.
Okay,
So that might be, I can't think of the name right now, but I can get it to you.
okay, that would be great. Let's see, what else? The hawkers and peddlers follow-up.
Yep.
And, I think, let's see.
Hopefully some information on the CNA's meeting. There's
Yes.
anything back on that?
Yes. And the follow-up with Scott and the training.
Yeah.
Yep.
Hopefully we'll have done it by then.
Let's hope so. Great.
I just don't like things dragging on like forever.
For months and
'cause
months,
It
yeah.
feels like you aren't accomplishing anything.
And I did try to do some more research on that Urban Maine program, and I haven't actually gotten a physical call back, but I went on the website today just to kind of look what's going on. And they actually, in Boston, they're hosting a conference for urban Maine development. So, and implementation of 20 neighborhoods in Boston where they have programs going. So I thought that was really interesting. Just because we do have like a Main Street village, we have Grassmere, I'm not exactly sure, you know, is one section, and then obviously Penardville. And so I'm gonna do a little more research and try to get some information and get back to everyone on that.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay. If nothing else, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to adjourn?
Second. All right. Motion seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, meeting adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thank you.